Every single game that Sweet Baby Ink touches turns to trash or has major controversy surrounding it. It's so funny to see one single company be a part of so many major disasters, but they definitely are. And now the latest SBI infected game, South of Midnight, is completely flopping on Steam because it failed to hit 1,500 concurrent players on release day and it is already tanking on the Steam charts. I have a few different things to show off, but before I get into the topic, if you enjoy the content I create, check out the links in the description, join the community in my live streams, and consider supporting through Patreon or YouTube memberships. Now, every once in a while, Sweet Baby Inc. is a part of a game that seems that it's going to be a major success, and then it isn't. God of War Ragnarok was still pretty successful, but it faced major controversy because of things like rewrites and race swaps. You had Alan Wake 2, which was just heartbreaking to me. I absolutely love the first game. And then the second one, they had half of the game as Alan and then half of the game as Saga. The story itself just really wasn't that great. It did not hit the same way that the first game did, and South of Midnight is a AA game. It was never supposed to be some like major AAA release, but I still had some hope for it because I thought that the visuals looked very good in the teasers and trailers. I didn't necessarily think that the gameplay looked terrible, maybe a little bit too simple, but now that I've played it, it definitely didn't deserve even the little bit of hype that I gave it. Unfortunately, it is still very pretty, but beauty only goes so far. Most video games releasing nowadays should be pretty to some extent. And I think the visuals that they went for are good, but the rest of the game was poorly executed. You basically have one attack and you have a couple of abilities, like you have a force push, you have a force pull, you have a move that makes your enemies take more damage, but unfortunately, that's really where that excitement ends because you're constantly fighting the same, I'd say, four types of enemies to be generous, because three pop up in almost every single instance of combat, but one, which is like a brute, only pops up every once in a while. So that's a problem. And then there's only, at this point that I'm at in the game, which I'm halfway through and I've only had one stream of it, is one going on to two bosses, which I'm at like the halfway point. So there's clearly only going to be three bosses, and it's only an 8 to a 10-hour experience depending on like how slow you play the game. So it's just not a full-blown experience, at least in my opinion. I don't think that there is anything that this game does shiningly well. I don't think that this game does anything that it really deserves a lot of praise for. And I did think that the idea of the stop motion feel in the cutscenes was cool, but it was executed really poorly. All around, just not a game that I thought was going to be a little bit better. I thought maybe the story was going to be super preachy, but at least like the gameplay would be fun and it would be very pretty and it would have a lot of depth and lots of lore. It's a really forgettable experience, at least in my opinion. But taking a look at the launch day numbers, they were not good. According to SteamDB, the game hit a peak concurrent player count of just 1,411 on April 8th, which was when the game came out of early access on Steam. Now, yes, this is a game that came out on Game Pass day one, but developers still need copies to sell outside of Game Pass because they're not making money from Game Pass. They still need people to swipe their credit cards on Steam or on the Xbox storefront. They still need people to show up, and I just don't see that really happening here. The low player numbers were not surprising given it's a Sweet Baby Inc. infected game. Of course, there are millions of gamers who have talked about Sweet Baby Inc. over the past year and a half. Lots of people who are boycotting, and ultimately people who are just much more skeptical of the products they are working on, because Sweet Baby Inc. is really only hired to assist on one type of game, and that type of game is one that leans heavily into identity politics. And that's sad to say, right? Because I don't want so many games coming out being infected with this type of messaging, but there are. And you can basically guarantee yourself that Sweet Baby Inc. or Black Girl Gamers or one of these very similar narrative consultation companies is going to be a part of a project like this, and the modern audience that they're making these games for could always show up and prove us wrong, yet they never do because this modern audience doesn't really exist. I say this with every game that launches: Unknown Nine Awakening, Flintlock The Siege of Dawn, Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League, Concord, Dustborn, even this. If the modern audience wants to support a game, they would have 100,000 people buying a title like this, but they never freaking do. It says, of course, maybe the biggest commercial disaster Sweet Baby Inc. was associated with was Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League, and those numbers peaked at 13,459 over on Steam. But taking a look now, it still has not gotten any better. All-time peak 2 days ago, 1,411. That has stayed the same. The 24-hour peak was 1,251, and players in game right now is 737. This is a very short experience, so I don't think that people are really going to put in more than 2 to maybe 3 sessions max into this game before they finish it, which also doesn't help because it's a game that costs $40, so it's not like it's a full priced standard experience, but they are not providing you with a lot of value here, at least in my opinion. And of course, just 1 day after release, South of Midnight has already gone south on the Steam charts. It's already down to number 440, which we do not know a lot of specifics about this game, but it is a AA game with an estimated $30 million budget. And as far as we're aware, 5 to 6 years of development. So you would think that the experience would be lengthier, they'd be giving you more value, but unfortunately, people like Kim Belair probably swooped into this game and altered things. Keep in mind, last year we heard a report, of course, take it with a grain of salt, from Mark Kern, aka Grums, showing some leaked images and claiming that Hazel, the lead character, was originally supposed to be a white lady, but they ended up race swapping her and her mother. And of course, if you play this game, the main villain, is a evil white lady. So you can definitely tell that a narrative was forced upon this game if those rumors are true, and to me, it definitely seems that way. But, Sweet Baby Inc. kills everything that it touches. And one of these days, companies will need to recognize this. One of these days, studios will need to come to the conclusion that narrative consultancy groups are not good for your title. And hey, I always say this, if you are a studio or you are a writer and you need to bring in another company to tell you how to change your story and fix it, you probably suck at your job and you don't deserve to have that job. I'm not talking about like beta readers giving initial feedback. We are talking about full-blown editors here. We're talking about people who are telling the developers what they should or should not do in the name of political correctness, which is just not right, at least in my and many other people's opinion. So Sweet Baby Inc. is struggling. We also heard a report recently come out that claimed that a lot of games that Sony was working on that SBI was involved with have been canceled, like a live service God of War game, and maybe Sony won't be working with SBI anymore. I wouldn't go as far as to say that, because it seems that Sweet Baby Inc. has a lot of pull in this industry, working with Sony's, working with Square Enix's, working with Ubisoft's, working with Xbox Game Studios and Microsoft. So I don't want to say that they're just going to magically disappear one day, though we are hearing a lot of very bad news for them. And with failure after failure after failure under their belt, it can't look good to the companies that they ultimately reach out to, or studios that might be looking for consultancy groups. So their latest game, South of Midnight, is not going so well so far. It, player count wise, has been abysmal, had a terrible start with 1,411 players. And even when you compare it to some other games that Sweet Baby Inc. has put out, like Unknown Awakening and Flintlock The Siege of Dawn, it's really not that much better because, well, Unknown Awakening was 285 6 months ago at release, which is bad. And then Flintlock The Siege of Dawn, which had 648, so it's technically doing better compared to these other AA launches, though I wouldn't say like 500 people is really doing all that much better. So I'll be keeping my eye on this game over the next few days. When I'm uploading this video tonight at 7 p.m. Eastern, I'll be playing more of it and ultimately finishing the game. We'll have to see how that goes. Maybe it will get better, maybe it won't. But for now, that's all that I really had to discuss in this video. Let everyone know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this, give it a like, and if you didn't, give it a dislike. I appreciate your support either way, but I'll talk to you all again in the next video really soon.